And that will be when?
All right, I'm going to switch it up a little bit. If some of you on this side could just turn around, we're going to do a PowerPoint presentation. I apologize in advance if it seems like we're skipping, but it's a 45-minute presentation cut down to 10 minutes. So, yeah, I'm going to fix it and try to. Much better. Okay, so my name is Tara Bono. I'm with an organization called Citizens Campaign for the Environment, and I'm joined here also by Jordan Christensen, also with Citizens Campaign for the Environment. So I want to thank everybody who gave some really great information on the nuclear power plant today. And we're going to, I guess it's a good ending topic, is to talk about where do we go from here? What are our energy choices moving forward? So Citizens Campaign for the Environment, along with NYSERDA, PACE, and ACE, are part of this New York Wind Energy Collaborative. And we're giving wind information across residents across New York State. So why are we here? We all, of course, know we're at an energy crossroads. The decisions that we make today and tomorrow are going to decide New York's energy future for hundreds of years to come. Yeah. I mean, is it hard to see on an angle like this?
It's hard to see back there. I'm sorry if you guys can't see over there, but.
Maybe move the projector.
It's all right.
Thanks. Okay. So this is what New York State's energy portfolio looks like right now. We can see that right now wind is only 2% of New York's energy mix. We're going to make sure and we're going to work to increase wind energy and replace things like nuclear, which is 30% currently. Fossil fuels, of course, pollute New York, and we are committed to cleaner air, water, and reduced greenhouse gas emissions. We know there's not just one answer. It's going to take a mix, a diverse portfolio to move forward and move out of nuclear, gas, oil, fossil fuels. Okay, and the answer is to add non-polluting renewable energy. Right now, New York State has a RPS, or Renewable Portfolio Standard, and that requires 30% of the electricity sold in New York State to come from a renewable source by 2015. Unfortunately, we're not completely on track to meet that, but groups like ours and coalitions are moving forward to work towards that. There's also net metering that paves the way for it, and NYSERDA, NYPA, LIBOR, other utility companies are also working towards it as well. I'm just going to skip. I know we have limited time here. So state of wind globally. Right now, you can see in the last 10 years, globally, as a global community, we've increased our wind by a lot. We're really moving forward with it. In 2010, there were 203,500 megawatts of wind installed globally. Unfortunately, when we look at the US and New York separately, we see that we're not doing as well as some other places. We have 40,000 megawatts, 40,180 megawatts in New York State. Now, it might look like we're doing well, but as a percent of our population and as a percent of our energy demand, it's really not that impressive. And China is definitely leading the way. They are moving forward not only with wind, but solar as well. Of course, other countries like Germany, now that they're phasing out all of their nuclear, is also really moving forward at this too. State by state, if we look at a map of the states, we see that, surprisingly, Texas is leading the country with wind energy. New York right now is at number 11. Yeah, Texas, right? Who would have thought? Wind energy potential. There is a huge potential here. You know, one of the biggest arguments, and there's a lot of misinformation out there, a lot of you know that, is that it's not effective. There's not enough out there right now to phase out things like nuclear, to phase out things like hydrofracking and drilling. But the wind is there. If the wind stops blowing, we have bigger problems to worry about. Globally, there's enough wind energy to supply 5 times the world's total electricity needs. In the US alone, enough wind energy off our coastlines, that's just offshore wind, to replace all of the electric power plants in the US.
Let's do it.
Let's do it, right?
Wow.
So this is just a quick map of some of the existing and proposed wind development sites in New York State. And these are just two examples in Tug Hill, New York and Lackawanna, New York, both existing and successful wind operations. 3 key things you need to build a wind farm: good winds, available land, sufficient transmission capacity, which is one thing we're really struggling with in New York right now, and of course, community participation. This is a map of the winds in New York State. You'll see most of the available or better winds are offshore. Okay, wind energy in the environment. Pollution offsets. A lot of people talk about the cost of wind and as compared to other things. When we consider these, we really need to understand everything that's involved here. Coal-fired power plants, 350,000 megawatts for those. We look down, NOx, SOx, carbon, huge, huge numbers there. The wind column, you can see zeros all the way down. Completely emission-free, really successful numbers here. Pollution offsets. In 20 years, just 1 megawatt turbine, and that's actually a modest-sized wind turbine, produces 61,320 kilowatts of electricity and saves 55 million pounds of CO2, 189,360 pounds of SO2, and 73,000 pounds of NOx. Wildlife impact comparison. This is one of my favorite slides and something I think a lot of you can take back and bring some information to your groups also. We see on the left here a column of all different types of energy sources: coal, oil, natural gas, nuclear, hydro, wind, and we look at the impacts to wildlife in all different stages of development. Right now in resource extraction, there's really high potential and medium potential for nuclear. You know, that is where nuclear affects most of its wildlife in the resource extraction. Thousands of birds, we'll see in a few slides from now, die every year from nuclear extraction operations. And that's one of the biggest arguments, frankly, that we hear at Citizens Campaign for the Environment. Oh, these wind turbines, they spin and they kill the birds and they kill the bats, which is true. There are some issues with this, but when it's compared to other operations, coal, oil, natural gas, it's very, very minimal. Of course, fuel transportation has its own risk, construction of the facility, powering the facility, transmission, and of course, decommissioning. So wind, and of course, solar would be on a very similar page here, has the lowest, moderate, and zero potential for wildlife impacts. Visual impacts. This is another thing that we hear. People don't like to look at wind. We like to think of these as kinetic art. I saw on campus there's a lot of really great sculptures. This, we think, is much more pleasant to look at than some smokestacks or, you know, nuclear power plants somewhere also. And the cows don't seem to mind them really that much either. Okay. Bird. You want to go back to sound?
Yeah, because I'm hearing about that all the time.
Okay. So sound impacts. Here's just a quick graph showing some of the comparisons of sound. The biggest thing to take away from here is they say 100 feet to 200 feet away from a wind turbine, it would sound just as loud as your refrigerator running on a normal everyday basis. So this is one of the big arguments that we hear also, is that it's, you know, we're going to be at the beach. I should have clarified, I'm from Long Island office, and we worked to do the Long Island offshore wind project, and that was one of the biggest arguments that we did here, is not just the visual impacts, but people didn't want to hear it. Sorry, but if you can stand on the shore and over the crashing waves, you can hear those, you have supersonic hearing, and that is just a completely different issue. But wind really doesn't have any sound impacts. Bird impacts, just to go back to that again, and bird impacts put in perspective. This is also something interesting. When we talk about the impacts to birds and bats, it needs to be considered not only against other forms of energy generation, but other anthropogenic habits as well. Buildings kill, you know, 2% of the birds. Power lines, actually house cats are considered one of the biggest threats to birds. And then you see wind is all the way down to the bottom, 0.01%. So for us, that's not a valid argument.
Nuclear kill birds.
Nuclear kill birds, as I mentioned, in the resource extraction process.
Oh, uranium
So,
one?
yep, in 2006, just one example, 14.5 million were killed by fossil fuels, nuclear 327,000. All right, I see my sign off, so I'm just going to skip through here.
I'm sorry, can you
Make
put
sure
that
I'm-
stat out again? That's amazing.
Which one?
The one you just did about the impact on...
Is
Actually,
this
I'm
on
going to
the
hang out
web?
afterwards, so if you will just get a number for me, that way I can just talk quickly about the subsidies. Right now, as we all know, all energy sources are subsidized. However, fossil fuels receive way more subsidies than renewable energies. So we see on the left here, it's hard to see on the screen, but the left bar is the fossil fuels, and on the right is all renewables. If renewable energies were subsidized just as much as nuclear and fossil fuels, it would be way more comparative. We would have, able to build up the industry and have them, be competitive in the market.
But corn-based ethanol isn't renewable.
No, but it's just, the red
I
is,
see the
yeah.
red.
So you see, there's actually a lot here. But if anyone wants to hang out, I'm going to have these slides open. We can talk more about them. And our organization, along with the collaborative, is going to be having a whole series of webinars where we give the full version of this. There's actually one tomorrow. There's a few coming up the rest of this week. There's one next week on the 29th. So if anyone wanted to log on to them or register for them, they're completely free webinars. And you can visit our website or the collaborative's website over there.
Do you have the slideshow up on the website?
Yeah, it'll be the slideshow. Yep, exactly. So stop by afterwards if you have any other questions, and thank everyone here for your information, and thank you for having us also.